Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Pascoe. I am the Chief Executive of the International Water Centre based in Brisbane, Australia. I've worked in the water sector for many years, part of that in the city of Brisbane, and where at one stage I was the manager of water and sewage, but I've worked in water treatment, wastewater treatment, and in more recent years I was involved in the development of water recycling facility. I'll talk a bit more about that later. I've also worked internationally for the International Water Association in London. So I look forward to sharing my story with you about Brisbane's water story, and in particular Brisbane's water story on sustainable water usage. Let me begin by talking a bit about integrated water management. I certainly like to think and start us thinking about the whole of the water cycle. So this is a picture that's a little bit representative of Brisbane. Brisbane is based on a river that's runs through an estuary that's near Moreton Bay on the east coast of Australia, and we want to protect Moreton Bay, of course, but we also need to provide water and sanitation services for the 2.5 million people that live in this part of Australia. This picture, I think, is useful because it lets us think about things like water recycling, water-sensitive urban design, which I think you refer to in Taiwan as sponge cities. It also considers things like water recycling, desalination, the use of groundwater. So trying to give a whole picture of the water cycle. Now, Australia is known as the land of drought and flooding rain. These two pictures are of the same storage in Brisbane. It's called Ivanhoe Dam. And the picture at the top of the screen was taken in 2007. And the picture at the bottom of the screen in 2011. In 2007, the dam was sitting at about 16 to 17%. In 2011, in this photograph, it was sitting at 190%. This dam actually has a flood storage capacity, so its normal level of 100% was overfilled in this case as the dam was receiving floodwaters. So the city I live in can be 1 year in drought and indeed the next year in flood. The other thing I do want to talk about, and you may have seen this work that's been developed in Australia with this notion of the continuum of how our cities develop, where we start as water supply cities, we move to sewered cities, drain cities, waterway cities, water cycle cities, and indeed water sensitive city. And this is then I think where Taiwan is wanting to think about in the space of sponge cities. And for me, sponge city or a water sensitive city, where we are actually thinking about using the whole water cycle. Where particularly we're thinking about water recycling, we're thinking about the use of stormwater. We're thinking about keeping water in the city to keep it cool. And indeed, a few years ago, as we were working on this notion of water-sensitive cities, we've done a bit of an evaluation of where some of our cities are. And we think from a policy point of view that Brisbane is maybe between waterway city and water cycle city, similarly for Melbourne. So this is where we aspire to be, or our policies suggest that we would like to be. But some of our the actual fact is that we're still in these places around waterway city. And I think of waterway city as the city where you're looking at your waterways and you're thinking of your waterways as enhancing your cities. You're recognizing that you don't want to pollute those waterways. But as we move towards water cycle city, we are actually thinking about perhaps using recycled water or stormwater in our water supplies. So perhaps enough of context. One of the things that that we experienced in southeast Queensland we referred to as the Millennium Drought. So we had a drought that went for about 10 years, from the turn of the century, from around about the year 2000, until we started to receive drought-breaking rains around 2009. But in that time, we developed this notion of a water grid. This picture is not all that easy to consider, but the city of Brisbane is on the Brisbane River, and is located near where it says here Leslie Harrison Dam, or in the middle of the spaghetti of the pink and the green pipelines. The green pipeline is showing what's referred to as the Western Corridor Recycled Water Scheme. That green line is about 200 kilometres long, so that gives you an idea of scale. And the idea of that Western Corridor scheme was that we would take wastewater, we would treat the wastewater to drinking water standards, and then recycle it through that pipeline to the water storage. You can see around about in the middle of the picture what I referred to before in the photographs as Wivenhoe Dam. So the idea was that we would put the recycled water back into Wivenhoe Dam. So that was the recycled element of the grid, the water grid. But the pink lines here that actually show how we connected some of our system over that almost 250 kilometre length. From in the north, you can see the pink line joins a dam, and in the southernmost end of this pink pipeline, there's a desalination plant. So we built, in this period of 10 years, we built water recycling facilities, desalination plants, and this grid that gave us the ability to move water over a large area of around Brisbane. So in this time, as you can see in this picture, our water usage in this is Queensland, QLD's Queensland, which is where Brisbane is located, and our water use around the 2000 to 2004 was of the order of 300 to 350 litres per person per day. So when I was managing our water systems, this is the kind of usage that we're using in Brisbane, something like 340 litres per person per day. So we had our dishwashers, we had our toilet flushing systems with large volumes, we had shower roses that produce large volumes of water. So we're using 340 litres per person per day. during this time of the drought, we went through a serious amount of work with our communities to start to modify behaviour. And we had this this campaign that was called Target 140. You can see it here on this screen. And you can see that the website showing here Target 170. So as the drought started to break, we went from Target 140 to Target 170. We were saying that people could start to use a bit more water. You can see also on this screen that the water storage was 41.69%. So that's up from that figure that I mentioned before, 17%. So we were getting some rainfall by the time we were saying that we could ease restrictions and have a new target of Target 170. But here's a screenshot from August in 2007, when we were certainly right in the middle of this Target 140. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen the target of 140 litres per person per day. And our actual performance was 123 litres per person per day. So we were seeing this every night on the television news. We were giving people feedback. We were giving community feedback on water usage. And you can see here in this picture that the dam levels were at this time only 20%. So as I said, we had a minimum of about 17%. Obviously here we'd had a little bit of rain, and the dam levels were at 20%. That's still very low, and in fact that's like 1 year's water supply left for the city of Brisbane. So this campaign was in part about giving people feedback on how much water they were using, but the campaign had other elements. It was providing advice to people, was providing subsidies to people for installing dual flush toilets, for installing low flow shower hoses, washing machine. Nearly every washing machine now in Brisbane is a front loading washing machine rather than a top loading washing machine. So we went through this campaign, this behaviour change campaign, supported by subsidising the infrastructure in people's houses. We were also supporting industries to use less water. So in this drought period, we went through this serious campaign. Today, in fact, literally today, as I'm recording this video, I had a look at the SEQ Water, Southeast Queensland Water webpage, and you can see that the average usage today is 170 litres per person per day. Our water storages are still certainly not full. They're sitting at 60% today. And there's been a reduction in that water storage in the last 7 days. Similarly, over here, there's been a bit of an increase in the water usage in the last 7 days. And that's because we in Brisbane, we're in the southern hemisphere, we're moving into summer, so the days are starting to get a bit warmer. And there's been a little bit of rain, but not very much. So you can see that we've moved from 10 years ago, where we were using 350 litres per person per day of water, and we're now in a fairly normal situation of using about 170 litres per person per day. So our water usage, our efficiency has improved. We're now using about half the water per person that we used 10 years ago. And we say that's because we've done some significant things like changing the infrastructure inside the house. Everyone has a dual flush toilet. Nearly everyone has a front-loading, water-efficient washing machine. Nearly everyone has a low-flow shower row. So, and many people through that time of the drought start to modify the way they kept their gardens. Look, I've only got a few more minutes. I want to show here an example of a house in Mackay, not in Brisbane. It's a few hundred kilometres north of Brisbane. But the houses in this city all have water meters where the homeowner can go and look at the water meter online, can see the daily water use, and they can compare their daily water use with the average usage around them in the city. So this is another way then of modifying behaviour, where with smart meters, and these are becoming a bit more common. This city of Mackay has completely metered its city. It also allows people, as I said, to compare their water usage. In this house, it's 239 litres of water per day, and in that region, it's actually 750 litres per day. I know this house has 4 people in it, so there are 4 people in this house using 239 litres per day. So with the use of technology of smart metering, where we can provide this information to people. And a quick note about the future. So the planning in Southeast Queensland is saying that the water, this wheel, is showing that we need new sources of water at 11%. It's saying we want to use demand management, the sort of things I've just been talking about, maybe like rainwater tanks, stormwater harvesting, might represent 19% of our water use going forward. Our existing dams, 40%. New dams and weirs, 20%. New desalination, 5%. But we need to find some more water, and maybe that's via recycled wastewater. So that gives you a quick picture of what we do in Southeast Queensland. I think something else to remember, depending on where you are, the amount of stormwater that falls on your city. In the case of Brisbane, it's this green bar. There's more stormwater falls on the city than we actually use for drinking water. So maybe we can be thinking about stormwater as a source of water supply, which we haven't typically used in our cities. And these are just some photographs of the facilities of reverse osmosis microfiltration that we're using in our desalination and water recycling plants. Thanks very much.